Cześć, tutaj Tomek Kopyra z blogu blogkopyra.com. Kolejny raz w Bartku, kolejne kolaboracyjne ważenie, tym razem z gościem z Anglii, Justin Hawk z browaru Moor Beer Company z Bristolu obecnie. I just introduce you. So nice to see you, Justin. We've met 2 years ago at your brewery when I made a video and interview with you. It's great thing that you come to brew, collaborative brew with guys from Poland, with guys from Doctor Brew. What will be the beer?
We're making a new style of beer, or at least something we're interested in trying. So we're making an old lager. So off of sort of a basic old ale recipe, a dark old ale, about roughly 7.5%. But we thought it would be interesting to try and do it in more of a lager style. So combining the traditions from England old ales with more sort of lager brewing from Poland. And also we're looking at different hop varieties that we're going to add to it. Also hopefully trying to use some of the local hops.
So there will be only Polish hops?
We're going to do the rub and the sniff in a second, but we expect that'll probably be the case. There's some interesting new ones we want to try.
Czyli tak jak słyszeliście, to będzie old lager.
Tak.
Na czym jego old jeszcze ma polegać?
No generalnie cała koncepcja będzie jak w Old Ale'u, tylko że będzie na lagerowych drożdżach, więc zasyp.
Koncepcja jest taka, żeby pomieszać takie angielskie, wyspiarskie piwowarstwo i dodać do tego coś polskiego. No i zasyp jest robiony tak, jak się robi Old Ale'a, a fermentujemy to tak, jak się fermentuje lagery i chcemy użyć do tego polskich chmieli.
Czyli to będzie wasz pierwszy lager?
W ten sposób zrobiony na pewno.
Ale nie w Bartku, czy już był jakiś?
Aha, nie, to tak.
W Bartku, bo był Stopro, tak? American Pils. Ale to było w Jabłonowie.
Tak.
Czy w Tarczynie, no nieważne. So the mold bill is similar to Old Freddie Walker?
It's along that line, but it's just a little bit lighter in color. So the malts that we're going to use are not quite as roasted. So you should still have some toffee and darker flavors in there, but not quite as black.
When I tried your Old Freddie Walker, because it takes me a long time to go to that review, and I was a bit surprised that it's so dark. Yeah, when I think about Old Ale, I see an amber color beer. It's your interpretation of Old Ale, or it's typical? It's normal for Old Ale. It could be also so dark.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, to be honest, Old Ale is it's a style that virtually doesn't exist anymore. I can't really name other breweries that are making sort of older examples of it. To me, the style works well with the darker malts as opposed to the lighter malts, because when you go up in alcohol like that, if you don't have the hops or something bittering to balance it out, then it can become a bit sweet and cloying. And I think having the darker malts in there tends to help to balance out the sweetness a little bit.
So, because when I was reading about this style, the main factor is time in this style beer. Yeah, that it should be matured for 1 year. But I think that you are not maturing it for one year in your brewery. So your idea is something between barley wine and extra special bitter.
No, I wouldn't say that. We do mature it not for a year, but it's a beer that we make for maturing and for aging. It's a beer that I think tastes better many years in, but it's ready to drink and still tasting good when it's only a couple months old. So we do mature it for a while. We always bottle condition it or condition it in the keg or the cask. But we would also encourage people to take it and age it for longer.
Yeah. What is your attitude to aging in barrels, wood barrels, oak barrels?
We do, I think wood barrel aging is a completely different art and a different way of making beer than brewing. Brewing beer or producing beer in stainless steel in a short time, even if it's an ale or a lager, is a different skill to wood. Wood is, it's not alive anymore, but it's almost creates another living component to the beer that needs to be understood, and it doesn't always go the way you expect it to. So it's a completely different art and skill. But we do Old Ale, we do our Old Freddie Walker in Somerset cider brandy barrels, because we used to be in Somerset. And the combination of the flavors from the brandy and the wood with the old ale that tastes like fruitcake. Works really well together. So it's a beer that we've been doing since 2009. We're just about to release the new batch for this year.
Okej. A wy zamierzacie coś z drewnem kombinować w tym piwie?
Tak, jeszcze właśnie nie wiemy, co to będzie za beczka, ale chcemy trochę tego do beczki też przelać.
Let's check the hops, yeah?
Yep.
Let's choose the hops, the amounts and the varieties.
Okay. Cześć, witamy wszystkich. Dziękujemy, że przybyliście, szczególnie, że to jest poniedziałek. Dzisiaj z nami jest specjalny gość, Justin z browaru Moor. Na kranach mamy właśnie specjalnie dzisiaj piwa od Justina. Jest przedpremierowo nasz RIS, są inne nasze piwa, także innych polskich browarów. Bardzo się cieszymy, że jest tutaj tyle osób.
Cześć, tutaj Tomek Kopyra z blogu Kopyra.com. Jesteśmy w pubie Włodkowica 21 na after brewing party. With me Justin Hawk, Moor Beer, Bristol i Łukasz Lis i Marcin Olszewski z Doktora Brew. First, cans? Cans are sexy.
Cans are sexy. Cans taste the best. Cans you can take anywhere with you. You can take to the beach. You can take to a football game. You can take to a concert. No glass to break. More environmental. Better for transport because there's you can pack them better.
Less weight.
Less weight, so less fuel. More recyclable. A can, when you recycle a can, it's back on the shelf in 8 weeks. And glass, you can't do that.
So you have both cans and bottles and kegs or casks.
Yep.
Yeah, but the bottles are only for long maturing beers, yes?
Yeah, when we put in a canning line earlier this year, we thought we would carry on with bottles and cans for all of our beers. But as soon as I tasted the beer in the can, I immediately just decided we wouldn't do the beer in the bottle anymore for fresh beer. So the reason is beer in a can gets no light in it and it gets no oxygen in it. The freshness, the quality of the hop aroma and flavor, the freshness of the beer is it's incomparable. It's not the same, it's not a little better, it's a lot better. So as soon as I tasted it, I was convinced and I said we're not going to do our beer in bottle anymore except for beer we want to age.
What is really surprising for me that it's can conditioned beer. To znaczy, że piwo jest refermentowane w puszce. So it means that it's a refermented beer. Just the same as bottled beer, as you do previous your previous beers in bottles.
Correct. Yeah.
How it works?
A can is a container the same as any other container. So, of course, we were nervous the very first time we did it, but we've been working for 9 years really hard on our re-fermentation technique. We think it's some of the best in the world for re-fermentation. We concentrate very hard on the sugar and the yeast levels to get everything right and adjust it for the beer style that we want. And so we do 100% re-fermentation in the can. I've heard of some breweries that do just like a top-up re-fermentation in the can, so mostly they condition in the tank. And they put a very small amount of yeast just to try and finish it. But this is actually a proper 100% re-fermentation.
You add sugar, or what kind of sugars you add to re-ferment?
We just add
Wort?
No. Well, we do add wort. We do Kreuz in some beers. It depends on the beer and the beer style, but normally we use a very simple sugar, and we measure every single batch of beer that we do. We measure the sugar content, the yeast cell count, and the yeast viability, and we adjust as we need to get the right levels.
So it depends. It could be sugar, sugar syrup, or it could be wort, yes?
Correct.
Or krausening beer.
Correct. Yeah.
Okej. Porozmawialiśmy o puszkach, bo one się najbardziej rzucają w oczy, ale znaczy podobają się wam?
Bardzo.
Nie?
Nie wiem, czy tak można powiedzieć, ale
Nie, to ja to mówię, że puszki są sexy. Justin powiedział, że mają dwa rodzaje. Dla piw, które są w dużej ilości sprzedawane, mają puszki nadrukowane. Natomiast dla krótszych serii mają puszkę tylko z takim tłem, na które naklejają etykietę. What is the amount of cans you have to order to print on can?
So we went and looked. There's really only in Europe 3 companies that make cans, and they have different levels of ordering that you must do for print size. So we went with Crown, who has they gave us 2 advantages. First advantage is Crown. First advantage is they have the lowest print requirement, so we get 50,000 cans per print.
50,000.
50,000. The other thing that they do that's fantastic is their technical services. So the Crown sends someone to our brewery every month or so, and they actually just turn up and they go and inspect all the cans and make sure that everything is perfect.
I think that one of the question which our viewers can ask ourselves, how it changed the sell of the beer. It's selling the same as bottle, worse or better?
Sales since we switched to cans have absolutely skyrocketed. So in the first, I think it was the first 2 months, maybe 2.5 months that we started selling cans, we exceeded by volume the amount of bottled beer we sold the previous year. And it's only increasing by the amount. We're limited by the amount of fermenters that we have.
And this is the reason why you buy new tanks.
So we're doubling. We just moved to Bristol a 1.5 years ago, at which time we doubled capacity, and we're going to double again. So within less than 2 years, we'll have quadrupled capacity since moving from Somerset to Bristol.
Okej. Inspiruje. Powiedzcie, bo jak rozmawialiśmy w browarze, to jeszcze nie było wiadomo, jakie chmiele wybierzemy, czy wybierzecie. No też trochę tam w tym brałem udział. Koniec końców to nie jest tylko polski chmiel. Jakie odmiany trafiły do kotła?
Junga i Aurora. Aurora z pełnego przypadku. Znaczy,
Była w bagażniku.
Nie, no zamówiliśmy sobie taki
Aha, bo ty chciałeś zamówić polski chmiel, a dostałeś Aurorę.
Powiedziałem pani, że chcę zamówić kilka polskich, wymieniłem które. I ta pani mówi, ten mam, ten nie mam, ale za ten mam świetny zamiennik. I ja tak mówię, no dobra, niech będzie, a tak w sumie nie wpadłem na to, żeby jej przypomnieć, że ten zamiennik na pewno jest polski. Ale ona już mi go wrzuciła do pakietu, myśmy to kupili, no i to czekało na przyjazd Justina. I tak się okazało, że...
Przy wąchaniu się okazało, że robi robotę.
Że no, może być dobrze, no.
Okej, czy jeszcze chcecie rozwinąć ten wątek, że to jest old lager?
Nie.
Tak naprawdę nikt nie wie, co ono wyjdzie.
Nie wiadomo, jak ono się będzie nazywać, ze względu na to, że nie wiemy też trochę, jak ono się ułoży i chociażby czym je nachmielimy na zimno. I czy je nachmielimy na zimno, albo
Czy pójdzie do beczek, bo są też plany, żeby poszło do
No
beczek.
właśnie, jest tak dużo niewiadomych, że no trochę takie wróżenie z fusów jeszcze.
Okej. Czyli kiedy się możemy spodziewać tego piwa?
Za parę miesięcy.
Być może nawet w kwietniu. Ciężko jest powiedzieć.
Też zobaczymy, jak ono będzie dochodzić do siebie. Prawda? Trudno przewidzieć. Po prostu się testuje co jakiś czas i czeka na ten moment.
Czyli raczej wiosna albo późna wiosna.
Tak.
A w najbliższym czasie urodzinowe, tak? Czy coś wcześniej jeszcze będzie?
Święta będą.
Ale świąteczne już jest.
Rodzinowe wraca przed świętami.
Przed świętami wraca urodzinowe.
Urodzinowe w zasadzie zaraz będzie dostępne. Oprócz tego czeka Summit IPA Single Hop. No i z nowości, z nowości czy powrotów to w zasadzie tyle.
Znaczy no leżakuje barley wine uważony z Gonzalo.
Mieliśmy okazję próbować, naprawdę robi wrażenie.
I też powiem Ci, że to jest zastanawiające w tym momencie, czy my rzeczywiście powinniśmy go wsadzić do beczki.
Czy nie szkoda go?
Znaczy, no, myślę, że na pewno nie szkoda, ale gdyby miał on skwaśnieć, to byłoby szkoda.
Znaczy nie, no to może po prostu trzeba połowę wsadzić do beczek.
No ale to...
To szkoda, że to w ogóle
No właśnie.
Okay, Justin, you spent 2 days in Poland. What's your impression about Polish beers you tried?
Everything I've had so far has been great. I was really impressed the most with the Enigma IPA that we had fresh out of the tank today. Really fresh, great hop aroma, great flavor. I could drink a lot of it, and at 6.2%, that could be a little dangerous.
Yeah, definitely. So, maybe we try this can beer.
I think it's a great idea.
They haven't been
Chilled down,
but
yeah.
we recommend on the back of the can there's always a serving temperature
Yeah.
for every changes for every beer.
It's 12.
So it's 12. So we're not a million miles away, but
Yeah, I prefer warmer than colder, especially hoppy beers.
What we have to do?
This for me.
Yeah, I think.
so as you just shook it, threw it around,
Yeah.
threw it around the table. But there you go. Now this beer that we're drinking, Revival, it's a 3.8%. It's basically like a hoppy bitter. 100% by style and rate beer. Incredibly drinkable, fantastic flavor and aroma, just really sessionable. I was amazed
Wolisz inne.
when we canned it. There were some of the beers I expected the cans to be really good. Most of the beers met my expectations. Some of them exceeded. One of the beers that exceeded my expectations
Ale
was
ja
Revival.
tutaj wiesz co mam?
The 3.8%.
To tam jest.
I think it absolutely is
właśnie
packed with flavor. But
wiesz, tak jara.
I'll wait your opinion.
Ja...
There is definitely the character of English bitter, because I when I opening I think a bitter and American hops, probably it will be more like American pale ale than bitter, but there is a smoothness, there is a you know, some like beer in maybe the reason is the temperature and that it was shaked, so it's not carbonated, yeah, because it's released the
It had
CO2.
a rather aggressive release. of gas, yes.
Yeah. It released and it's really smooth like a bitter, exactly. And still very good aroma of hops.
Hop aroma, yeah.
I really wanted to taste this one because we have it on the tap.
On tap, yeah.
Yeah, and I can say maybe, I'm not really sure, but I think maybe from the can it's even better.
Could you pour me?
Yeah, it's really unexpected.
We have been.
Wystarczy więcej?
Nie, okej, daj mi, bo ja mam... no, it's just in glass.
Oh.
Because I have hoppiness from draft.
No, it's okay. Take you take this one.
Okay.
No problem. I would say that actually we in the brewery, as the brewers, we taste our beer in every way: cask, bottle, can, and keg. We know can is 10 times better than bottle, easily. Depending on the beer style, cask or keg can be better, but we've tasted some of them and said, actually, the can is better than the keg. I don't know exactly why, but it just maintains an amazing freshness. And if you can take that
I
fresh...
prefer keg,
Really?
really. But the thing could be in the temperature.
You know, when this is really a funny moment because because when we spoke why I am so happy, why we are so happy that we making beer review, it was because when we very near before we start the company Dr. Brew, we decided, okay, we want to open a company, we want to do the beers for people. And then we said, okay, let's check how it was done by other people from other countries. And in my previous job, I was traveling a lot, so I bought a lot of beers from Denmark and from Germany, from England, I think also, because that was the way how I drove to home. Okay. I bought them, and also we bought a lot of beers from out of the borders, and also your beer.
Okay.
And I don't remember which one it was, but for sure it was Battle 066.
Yeah.
And we make very long if with tasting and compare them all. And we was absolutely sure that your beer was the best, and we really never expected and even think that we will meet you, and secondly that we will make a beer with you. So this is really unbelievable. And
cheers.
And yeah,
Cheers for that.
Yeah.
For that. For
Sylvia.
So this is
Craft beer world is very small, and beer connecting people.
The beer world, we all, a lot of people I know in the beer world, we all left other jobs, other careers where we could make a lot more money than we make making beer. But because of that, we all have a similar mentality. We have great time together, we eat well, we drink well, we go and have great experiences and stuff like this. This is what makes it worthwhile. So I'm very happy.
And this is good reason to raise a glass and drink for craft beer revolution.
Yeah.
Yes.
More, you can open more, it's okay.
For the revolution, craft beer revolution.